What up, 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 my peeps? This is a 444 album review by Jay-Z. Well, the review is not by Jay-Z, it's by me, but the album is by Jay-Z. 444 album review, plus a download link to the album in the description. Let's get it. So a few of you may have heard my short little transition there with the story of OJ, that it's a little bit distorted. That's not the actual version of the song. We all know that, and we all know that YouTube is very touchy when it comes to copyright issues. So that's the reason for that. Without even wasting more time, guys, let's get into it. So basically, I think I've had now 444 for, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks. I'm not sure. It's been a while. It's more than 3 weeks, definitely. I've even shared it with a couple of people, and I'm not even ashamed about this, but like, you know how we roll. It's out here, we're in Africa, bro. Like, it's very rare that you find people buying music, like, but we support artists in other ways, you know. I'm an artist myself. I understand the struggle. I just pray that they forgive us, you know, but that's the way it happens. Anyway, I'm not even gonna dwell on that. First, I think a lot of people need to know, before I even get into this album review, that I myself, I am a South African. I am an African. And I think that's important when I go into this review. It's not even going to be a prolonged review. It's a very short, very specific and concise type of review. I won't go into too much depth and too much detail. I'm just going to speak about the things that really stood out to me. So the reason why I mentioned that I'm an African, it's because I feel that we as Africans consume, South Africans particularly, consume a lot of international music, like American type music, hip-hop specifically, mostly. So when we listen to hip-hop and we hear those stories, we hear how these guys are coming from the hood and they make it to the top, and you know, all of those themes and all of those how can I say, narratives. When we hear all of those narratives, we do sort of gravitate towards them and we relate to them, because at the end of the day, we are black, and the struggle of the black man is felt by the black diaspora all over the world. So when Jay-Z dropped 444 and we started hearing all the knowledge that he's dropping, you know, a lot of people, I guess, if you didn't take out the knowledge from the album, then you definitely took out the fact that Jay-Z was a lot more personal in the album. We'll get to that a little bit later, but just on the basis of knowledge on black pride and knowing thyself, and you know, coming to a point where you own your own equity, you're in control of everything you're doing. You no longer have, quote unquote, a boss. In a way, you become the boss of yourself. That's like all the knowledge that Jay-Z's been dropping, and how prioritizing, in a way, how black people, or niggas how niggas will focus on the things that are not necessarily important. You know, they'll focus on things that are, especially successful young niggas, you know, they don't look at the game with a long-term view. They'll always look at the game with how much can I stunt on these niggas, how much can I flex, that type of thing. I felt this album, Jay-Z's done this before, but like not so explicitly before, you know. He's never done this so explicitly and so deliberately and for such a prolonged and sustained time, and even to break it down in a manner that is so consumable to the average brain or mind. Because sometimes you can't give people knowledge and tell them things, but have it move over their head or fly across their head. You know, when he talks about, you know, what's more important than throwing money at a strip club? Credit. You know, those are just basic things that anybody can listen to, understand, and relate to. That like, yo, niggas, like, maybe we should be using our money differently. You know, I think that was very important. Like, it's strange to me that even in 2017, there's still people who do not think about the future in that way, especially if you've just come into money. You know, like, people just think that once you get a big paycheck, or or you get some sort of big sponsorship or whatever, some big deal, you think it's over, you think you're made now, and they never really go in for the long haul, you know. And I think the Jay-Z album and Jay-Z's life as a whole is very important in lamenting that whole thing of saying, okay guys, you can get into the industry, you can make it, you can come into the glitz and the glam, but you know, there's something more important than this. There is a future after this, you know. That's one of the highlights of the album in my perspective, because these are conversations that we as young, determined, young, focused black people, these are conversations we have all the time, speaking about like, yo, we need to sustain, we need to build, we need to grow. But you don't often find people actually speaking about it in the music. And we know that the music is by far the most influential thing, because it works on you subconsciously all the time. So I thought that part of Jay-Z's album was like super important. It's one of the parts, like, well, this whole review for me is really talking about the things that really stood out to me. The second thing that really stood out to me on this album that I thought was very important was the sonics. You know, sonically the album was, it's not to say it's like mind-blowing, it's not to say it's like out of this world, it's not to say it's like something you've never ever heard before, because we've heard samples, we've heard boom bap-esque type of rap, we've heard those type of things, but we've never heard it done in this way, especially in the modern era. You know, I feel like a lot of people fail to find a balance between accommodating people who are you know, 90s hip-hop, 2000s hip-hop, and it's still at the same time really have a sound that is very relevant and that speaks to the modern day. And I think through this album, Jay-Z was able to capture that so well. You know, he was able to blend the samples, the smooth hip-hop sounds with like some trap elements. You know, you listen to some of the hi-hats on the track, the way they do the hi-hat rolls, and it gives you that trap feeling, that trap vibe, but at the same time the song or the beat as a whole is not trap. You know, like that's something that's very hard to capture in the modern day. You'll find people more moving to the extremes, the polar ends. You'll find more people either doing complete trap, or you find people doing complete boom bap or complete conscious hip hop. You never really find a good balance of both, and I think Jay-Z really did that well. And that's one of the things that's gonna make his album speak to not just the old heads, but also a lot of the young guys. I'm a young guy myself. Like, I've always rated Jay-Z, but I'm not a stan, you know, like I'm not someone who listens to Jay-Z religiously, but like I do rank him amongst the top rappers that have ever done this. And so like it's very important that those type of guys, the guys that we look at as some of the greatest of all time, they still find a way to be relevant in 2017 and 2018 and beyond. You know, like it is important for you to stay true to who you are and your sound and whatever, but at the same time, the most important thing about the music is always the message. So if you find a way to make your message relevant by surrounding it with the right type of sonics, the right type of melodies and stuff like that, then it gets to speak to a new generation, and that generation is the one that's really ultimately going to determine the future, that's going to shape the future. So guys, I have a link, like I said, in the description. Download the album, listen to it, share it, have conversations about it. If you feel like I'm wrong or if I'm overlooking certain things, definitely hit me up in the comments. Tell me, Pinda, bro, this is where you're getting it wrong. But basically, you know, platforms like these are just for engagement, just for speaking out, you know, expressing personal opinion. It's not really anything personal. I don't take anything personal. If you feel like you can grow me, if you feel like you can put me onto some knowledge, then definitely hit me up, bro. Let's have, or sister, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. Otherwise, this is Short Meaningful Videos. Pinda P, that's your boy. Peace.